Part 23. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 221. Reward a piece of level-matched, tailor-made magic equipment. The old man spoke generously, but while speaking, he secretly glanced at Gretel's badge. God bless him, he must never open his mouth like a lion. Consistent with the level has two meanings. One is consistent with the mage level, that is to say, the equipment that the magician can currently use. The other is consistent with the arcane level. Usually this meaning is not a big deal, but now, it means wearing an equipment of at least level 7 or 8. Considering that Gretel is now a second level mage, it is best if he can use this equipment immediately. This also means that part of the magical power must be sealed and gradually unlocked as the magician's power grows. The difficulty of making is even higher than that of ordinary level 7 and level 8 magic items. Greet, however, did not understand the old man's inner story at all. He pondered for a moment, took the quill pen handed over by the old man, and began to draw. What I want is a large disc with a diameter of 1 meter, evenly inlaid with silver rods with constant eternal flame, or other light sources. The inlay must be even. If possible, there should be a concave mirror behind the light source to reflect the light source in front so that the emitted light will not be wasted. The number of light sources, the distance, multi-point focus in the inlay direction, this can ensure that when the entire disc is hung, there will be no shadows even if the person under the disc is operating. The light color must be pure white, and the brightness of the light source must be equivalent to the brightness of the sun at noon. Even if it is not a constant bright flame, it must be a cold light source and should not emit heat, otherwise it will be very uncomfortable for people standing under it. It is best to adjust the brightness of the light source, and also adjust which light sources are bright and which are not bright, so that the light spot can be adjusted to the size of the mouth of a teacup, the size of a bowl, and the size of a basin to meet the needs of different occasions. It's better to have a big cover outside, otherwise the blood will spurt out and it will be difficult to wipe away. He said everything with confidence and every detail. The old man was still smiling and listening at first, but as he listened, circles of mosquito coils began to appear in his eyes. Apparently, he had no idea what it was and what it could be used for. It wasn't until I heard blood spurting up that I was finally shocked. What are you going to build? What are you going to use it for? Why does blood spurt out? Shadowless lamp. Greet looked at him with a matter-of-fact look. There was even a bit of accusation in his eyes, as if he was blaming the other party for making such a fuss and interrupting himself. It is used to perform operations on people. Oh, it is to cut open people and then heal them, and in the process of dissecting animals, this thing is of great help. Otherwise, there would be shadows under the hands and under the knife. What? Can't even see it? At this point, Gretel got up and simply pulled the big piece of paper and turned it around. I pulled the other corner of the paper, brushed it, and drew a schematic diagram of the light path. Look like this. The shadowless lamp is on top, and the hand is here. No matter how you move it, there will always be a few rays of light hitting the bottom. Isn't it very convenient? But the premise is that the direction of each light source must be subtly adjusted to achieve this effect. Well. The old man rubbed his chin in thought, his eyes getting brighter as he thought about it. It makes sense, it makes sense. Whether it is assembling a magic doll or making magic jewelry, if there is such a big light shining on it, wouldn't it mean that no matter how you work, you will not be blocked by the shadow? Those little needles, little hammers, and little tweezers will never poke or hit your hands again. There's no need to beat around the bush, just put lighting in every corner. This stuff works. The old man looked at Gretel eagerly. Can this design be licensed to us? Can we sell it? Sell. Greet's thoughts were stuck on the spot. He rolled his eyes at the old man somewhat sullenly. Wait, I'm not done yet. There are many more requirements later. This lamp must have a hanging arm on it, which can adjust the height, rotate horizontally, vertically, and 360 degrees, and then maintain a fixed position. The hanging arm is supported on the base and cannot fall down top heavy. It is best to have wheels under the base so that it can be dragged around. Correct. The entire base, suspension arm, and headlight must be easily disinfected. It has to be made of metal. Smooth surface. I'll give you a bucket of liquid later and pour it on. The metal cannot be corroded. The old man was about to collapse. As an alchemist, he has seen many strange requests along the way, but there are not many that are so troublesome. Just this 360-degree suspended arm, it's so troublesome. Let me think about it, who is good at designing this kind of thing? This thing is so troublesome. Constant magic is not difficult, but these strange requirements, even if you don't need a magician, you still have to hire a master craftsman, which is very expensive. Gretel gave him a sad look. It's just a shadowless lamp, and his requirements are not high. It's just the most common operating room shadowless lamp. In my previous life, they were all sold on Dobeo for a few thousand yuan, and installation was included. Single-headed, double-headed, petal-shaped, single reflective, porous, and multi-focus, halogen light source, LED light source, you can choose. Wow, the strong industrial strength in the previous life really reduced the cost of industrial products to a very pleasant level. But no matter what, after weighing it, the old man accepted the customization task and negotiated the authorization with Gretel. In view of the fact that the technical content of shadowless lamps is not high and the application scenarios are limited, Gretel only needs a 15% commission on the sales amount and a sample. After the conversation, both parties looked at each other and were stunned at the same time. That, the magic equipment I promised you, seems to have to be reconsidered. Yes. Gretel scratched his head. The old man scratched his beard. In the corner of the conference room, a series of strange laughter goo came out, but it was Aurora Wharton covering her mouth with her hands, squatting at the table, laughing so hard that she couldn't straighten up. Gretel poked the quill in annoyance. With a click, the quill pen's barrel snapped and broke into two pieces on the spot. Gretel was so angry that he threw the pen away. I'm so annoyed. This quill pen doesn't work at all. Hey, can I order a pencil from you? Pencil, what is that? Use lead to write? Lead can't write. What? Even the Magic Council doesn't have pencils? Greed was resentful. That time-traveling senior, how poor is your science knowledge? You can't even draw a pencil? You promised that time travelers would change the world, but you only made KPI assessments. Pencils are made by mixing graphite powder and clay to make the shape of a pen core, and then firing it in a fire to harden it. Then it can be used for writing. By the way, in order to make it easier to use, it is best to use cork to make a pen holder, cut a semicircular groove on each side, and clamp the pen core inside and stick it. After using up the front section, you can shorten the pen barrel and continue using it. Gritby gestured. The old man continued to ask questions, and he began to talk about him again, and kept evading. The ratio of graphite powder to clay? I don't know. How hot is the fire? How long does it take to burn? Have no idea. What kind of softwood to use? It seems to be birch? Or basswood? Anyway, just try one thing at a time, just use wood that can be cut with a knife. The old man's face turned dark and dark. He questioned him again and again, making sure that he could extract no other information from Gretel, and finally pretended to be angry and slammed the table. You only have an idea and no specific formula. It's impossible to give you a high commission. Such a simple thing. Even a fool can do it. Gretel stared at him silently. Fool. Are you trying to say that even muggles can do it? All in short, the pencil authorization negotiated a particularly low share -1 copper coin per pencil. In addition, Greet is supplied with 100 pencils per month, as well as a pencil sharpener for sharpening pencils. By the way, the pencil sharpener with the tapered blade and the square box outside was also drawn by Gretel himself, and he used magic trick to temporarily shape it. So think of another magic equipment. It can be anything, offensive, defensive, mobile, just don't think of another one that can be sold. Emma, I'm so tired. He is a level 15 Archmage. Discuss business with children in person. If it weren't for the fact that what Greet took out was actually interesting, with more than one legendary mage standing looming behind him, what would he be like? Talking about business is usually handled by his students' students. Greet smiled sheepishly. He took inventory of the equipment on hand. Then, I don't lack anything for the time being, however, I have a follower who damaged his weapon when we fought against the Lord of Glory Church. Can you help me repair it? It's a small matter. It's settled. The old man agreed without thinking. The war with the Lord of Glory Church started in September last year. Gretel was still a level 1 magician, and he was still in a small place in the countryside. How could he have any followers? It's just a level 5 knight at best. A level 5 knight's weapon doesn't even cost much to make, let alone repair it. He generously took out a badge. Take it, go to the mission hall on the first floor, and hand it over together with the weapons to be repaired. Naturally, someone from the Alchemy Guild will be responsible for repairing it, so just remember to pick it up when the time comes. Greet thanked him. He couldn't even wait for the next day. He went down to Igor Peak at noon that day, led Bernard to the top of the peak again, and went straight to the auxiliary tower of the School of Change. In the evening of the same day, the person in charge of the weapons manufacturing branch of the Alchemy Guild led a small car, dragging the big bone stick in the car, and rushed into the workshop area where the old man was. Look at what job you gave us. What job? The North Glacier Barbarian, the special weapon of the mid-level berserker. The skeleton of an ancient alien beast, with the beast's soul sealed inside. Now the body is shattered and the beast's soul is injured. What can I do to mend that bone? How many gold wires are tied up? And what about the beast's soul? How to raise the beast's soul back? Looking for help from Black Crow Swamp? You should go catch one for me. The old man looked extremely ugly. He looked at the big bone stick, then looked at the badge he had given, and finally remembered that it was a reward for Gretel. It was over. I thought it could be done with 1,000 contribution points, but now it seems that 5,000 contribution points are all in vain. Can't live. Someone must bear this loss. In a rage, the old man copied 2 papers on microscopy and went straight to the office of the Magic Review Department next door, the mage in charge of the prophecy school. Old ghost. Get out of here. Who told you to comment on such a good paper? Thanks to at Yamengbing for the 1,500 starting coins. Thanks at I never knew what I should change my name to reward 500 starting coins. The book club group number is 649136249, welcome to chat together. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, please ask for all kinds of. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 222. How the old man in work clothes slapped the table of the School of Prophecy and extorted half of the cost of repairing the big bone stick is another story. After Gretel and the Alchemist Guild agreed on the reward, he happily plunged into his laboratory. Well, if you want to make electrolyzed water, electrolyzed saturated salt water, or synthesize something else, you can just play in the Tower of Babel. There is a power supply and a strong field barrier. If it explodes accidentally, someone will clean it up. If you want to get penicillin, it's best to go to your own monkey version of the P4 laboratory. After all, when developing penicillin, you will inevitably have to deal with Staphylococcus aureus, Escherichia coli, Pseudomonas aeruginosa, etc., and piles of bacteria. If you are not lucky, maybe the penicillin has not been purified yet, and some mutated and penicillin-resistant bacteria have quietly crawled out. Such as MRSA. If this thing comes out, penicillin series, cephalosporin series, sulfonamide series, rifampicin, etc. will all be useless. Greet can only try to maximize his luck and go shopping in the New World to see if he can find vancomycin. Ah, I get a headache just thinking about it. If this thing really spreads, with bad luck, half of the Magic Council could be wiped out. So Gretel is very conscious. He moved all the bottles and cans back to the laboratory on the outskirts of the city. From then on, he moved from the top of the mountain to the outskirts of the city and the forging area like a wheel. Master Warden followed him, up and down the mountain and up the mountain, running until his tongue was sticking out. Not only that, he also had to be carried over by the teacher and questioned. Has Gretel advanced? Okay, it seems not. Is he finished with his project? Mithril smelting, isn't it senior brother and the others who are doing it? Then what is he busy with? I'm treating the dwarves, I'm also taking over a project from the Alchemy Guild, I'm still making dyes and stuff. Why do you make dye? The Magic Council needs him some dye. Doesn't need him to make money. It's serious to urge him to advance quickly. Teacher, why do you think I can motivate him? I am his follower, not him who is my follower. Archmage Carlyle stroked his forehead. This little disciple was really spoiled by him, no matter how big or small he was, he even learned to talk back to him. Throwing him to be Gretel's follower didn't seem to make his innocent and optimistic character become a little more cautious. Hey, this also shows that Gretel treats this boy very well and doesn't put on any airs at all. If you can't push me, I'll push you. Call me here. Aurora Warden ran away. Half an hour later, Archmage Carlyle received a message from the metal message bird. Teacher, Gretel is not in the Tower of Babel. I will go to the laboratory at the foot of the mountain to find him. 2.5 hours later, the second metal message bird was brought into the mystery by the disciple of Archmage Carlyle and presented to the teacher. Teacher, Gretel is not in the laboratory at the foot of the mountain. He probably went to the forging area. I'll go find him. In the evening of that day, Aurora Warden found Gretel at the entrance of the forging area, who was having a great time and refused to leave. Gretel was surrounded by a group of dwarves in the center. That is to say, humans are a bit taller than dwarves, so Aurora can find her follower from the crowd effortlessly. Greet held a drawing board in front of him, smiled and waved, shouting to the dwarves around him. Don't be anxious, come one by one. Whose turn is it today? Stand up straight, tuck your chin a little bit, okay, don't move. Detect magic. What are you doing? Wizard Warden walked over curiously. As soon as he stretched his head, he saw Gretel holding the newly arrived pencil, brushing it, looking at the dwarf, drawing a few strokes, looking at the dwarf again, and drawing a few more strokes. With a focused expression and smooth movements, the dwarves around him poked their heads and watched with great interest. Look at the drawing board again. There is no appearance or clothing in Gretel's paintings, only thick and light, black and gray color patches. If you look carefully, it looks like the vertical skeletons at the necromancy school. While he was lost in thought, Greet had already finished drawing. The magic light flashed, and a copy was quickly made. One was carefully put away by Gretel, and the other was held in the hand of the dwarf who was painting, turning it over and over, looking at it with bright eyes. What is this? Look, this is your spine, these are your ribs. Gretel pointed to the hand-drawn X-ray and told him. The spine is fine, there is nothing wrong with it. This curvature is normal. It would be fatal if the spine were straight. Hey, there is a seam here on the seventh rib on the right, and it is a little crooked. Have you broken this rib before? Past. Was it broken in a fight? Or was it broken? Yes, yes, the dwarf nodded like rammed earth. When I was playing in the mine when I was a child, I accidentally rolled down and my chest hurt for 2 months. Mr. Mage, you are amazing. This is the skill of a priest, no, a radiologist. Gretel didn't want to explain this. He was only excited to get another X-ray, and he had one more piece of medical research information. It's a pity that the magic imaging didn't come out, so I had to draw it myself, hundreds of people, front, side, and different parts, and thousands of pictures had to be drawn. It was so painful. Even the pain could not stop Greet from being fully devoted. This is his first research on human-like intelligent creatures. So rare. In previous lives, all scientists in the world did not have this condition. After finishing an X-ray, Greet stretched and put away the drawing board. The dwarves dispersed, and Wizard Warden approached Gretel and poked him quietly. Gretel, can you go back to the summit tomorrow? The teacher wants to see you. Tomorrow. Gretel's men gave him a meal. He looked around with some resistance. I have a lot of things to do. Is it urgent with the Archmage? If it's not urgent, can I go there in a few days? It seems like I want to urge you to advance. This thing, Gretel immediately lost interest. It's not like you can advance by urging me. Can you help me tell the Archmage? I'll go as soon as I finish my work. Hey, let's go once. Master Warden went over and dragged him. Teacher won't lock you in the tower, just do me a favor and show your face before coming back. Stop by the Alchemy Guild to see if Bernard's Bone Club has been repaired. Then help me sort out these data. Greet threw him a stack of papers unceremoniously. Aurora Warden only glanced at it, and her eyes circled around each other, completely turning into mosquito-repellent incense. Name, age, gender, height, weight, body temperature, heartbeat, breathing, lung capacity, what are these? Oops. Don't worry about your name. Divide this information into categories for every 10 years old, calculate the average, and then calculate the average again. Hurry up and give it to me. Gretel is doing basic statistics on dwarves. There are about 200 to 300 dwarves in the entire forging area, and most of them are men between 100 and 200 years old, based on the dwarves' maximum lifespan of 400 years, that is, young men between 25 and 50 years old. In terms of medical statistics, this sample size is enough for preliminary statistics. During this time, he called a group of dwarves over one by one, and tested everything that could be measured except the blood pressure monitor, which still had no liver coming out. I have accumulated a thick stack of data in half a month, and the remaining work is to make statistics, draw charts, and get the normal value range. Ah, what's the use of making such a thing? Wizard Warden screamed. Shut up. Come on. Wizard Warden silently curled up into a ball and began to fulfill the duties of a follower, no, a calculating tool man. Gretel spread out a roll of paper beside him and began to write a paper line by line based on his impressions when measuring the data. To sum up, the heartbeat and breathing of dwarves are slower than that of humans, and the normal body temperature is relatively lower. The author speculates that this may be one of the secrets of the long lifespan of immortal species. This guess has not been verified. If there is an opportunity, comparative studies can be conducted on other humanoid creatures. The lung capacity of these dwarves seems a bit smaller. Could it be that these people have been mining all year round and have varying degrees of pneumoconiosis? I'll give it a try another day with dwarves who aren't very good at mining. The two of them wrote and calculated, and when they reached the summit the next day, they were both depressed. Archmage Carlyle looked at the pair of dark circles on his disciple's face, and then at Gretel's identically dark eyes, and couldn't even utter a word of urging. He rubbed his eyebrows and sighed. Advancing is not a matter of a day or two, but there is no need to work so hard. No, no, Aurora quickly clarified. He came here yesterday to write a paper. I was helping him calculate the data, but I accidentally calculated it too late. Fortunately, I didn't delay my meditation. Teacher, look, the paper. According to the instructions of the legendary mage, all of Gretel's papers must be submitted uniformly and reviewed by the legendary mage. Of course, the big laziness is worse than the second laziness, and the second laziness is worse than the little laziness. Since Gretel has a new follower, Master Warden has submitted papers on his behalf. As for Master Descartes, all the papers were read first by his disciple, Archmage Carlyle. The Archmage opened the paper naturally. I glanced around and saw the title. Research on Standard Physiological Data of Dwarf Males. The Archmage's feet shook on the spot. His fair face turned red instantly, his breathing was rapid, and his jugular veins protruded. Based on the experience of a deputy director of the emergency department, Greet intuitively felt that this person's blood pressure was probably going to go off the charts. Can nifedipine be suppressed? Or Betalic? If you are on the operating table, you should ask the anesthesiologist to give him some antihypertensive drugs, such as inhaling isoflurane, pushing some sodium nitroprusside, or pumping some nitroglycerin. Gretel was thinking in a daze. Opposite him, Archmage Carlyle shook the paper in his hand and said in a deep voice. Gretel, why are you focusing your energy on this? A magician like you, a magician with a talent for research like you should upgrade your mage level as soon as possible to avoid premature death. Do you know how much effort the Council has put into protecting you? Do you know that in order to protect you from being targeted by the Lord of Radiance Church, your important papers were secretly distributed to reliable magicians for experimental demonstration? Do you know that as long as you leave the Igor mystery lock, you will be under the surveillance of the Tower of Babel, and that there will be a full-time magician monitoring your location 24 hours a day? Do you know that such protective measures will last at least until you advance to level 5, that is, the level where you learn fireball technique and transform into a humanoid self-propelled turret? How about you go to the meditation room for retreat and raise your level as soon as possible? Now you have the contribution points. If it's not enough, I can lend it to you first. Thanks to @RedSnowdens for the 500 starting coins. Thanks to @MagicalGirlPikaMeow for the 100 starting coins reward. Another 3,000 words. Counting the 3,000 words written at noon, today's extra update is complete. Please subscribe, please give monthly tickets, please recommend votes, please book reviews, please ask for all kinds of. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 223. Seeing Archmage Carlyle's face red and thick-necked, with blood pouring from the top of his head, Greet really felt a little unbearable. After all, Archmage Carlyle was also kind to him. On the battlefield, he was forced into a desperate situation by the pursuers of the Lord of Glory. At the critical moment, this Archmage descended from the sky, blasted away the enemy and protected himself. It was he who made the decision on the spot, stuffed himself into the airship, brought him back and inserted himself into the training class. At first glance, Master Carlyle at that time was a handsome middle-aged man, gentle, elegant, noble and humble. Except for the fact that the golden robe is a bit eye-catching, his speech and attitude are impeccable. When he asked about his battle experience, he didn't show any contempt, and even showed a little curiosity. But now, the clothes are wrinkled, the eyes are red, the hair is messy, and there are a few strands of silver emerging from the hair. The way Gretel looked at him, he always thought of those coders who often went to the emergency department, who were fired from the company at the age of 37 and could only deliver food. Greet felt a little sorry for him. However, sympathy is sympathy, and matters of principle must still be adhered to. He waved his hand for Aurora to close the office door, shutting out the footsteps in the corridor and the probing heads of low-level magicians. He looked into the eyes of Archmage Carlyle and explained seriously. "Master, I listen to you very much. I can afford the cost of retreat, but everyone's way of advancement is different. I don't advance through retreat and meditation, besides, I'm not ready yet. What are you not prepared for? What else are you missing? Tell me and I will help you prepare together. The smooth muscles haven't been finished yet." But Gretel really didn't dare to blurt out these words. "A secret related to your own meditation. It's not that the Magic Council might force him to hand over the meditation laws, just hand it over, and there's nothing he can't hand over. The Magic Council is sincerely concerned about him and is his protective umbrella, so it's not a bad thing to hand it over to them." But based on how much they cared about him, Greet was really afraid that they would take away the rules of meditation, so he studied them over and over again. If he didn't study and understand, he was not allowed to practice by himself. Furthermore, just handing it over is a big project in itself, and it can delay the big project for at least a few months. This can't be done by just giving them the game solution and system solution silently. Greet thought hard for a while. "I need to be exposed to more things, I need to increase my knowledge, I have to finish things from beginning to end. I can't relax and advance with things on my mind. For example, the mithril smelting project must be completed. If the project is successful, you will be able to advance." Archmage Carlyle looked at Gretel suspiciously. The Magic Council invested 30 or 40 magicians, including his disciples and grandsons, in the electrolytic smelting project, with countless manpower and material resources. A few months later, 2 large boxes of graphite were used, and hundreds of kilograms of intermediate products from mithril smelting were used. The result was nothing. It's not that he regrets the manpower and material resources. In fact, the Magic Council has invested thousands of times more in mithril smelting than Gretel's project over the years. The question is, if you say you can advance after completing a project, how long will it take to complete the project? Are you lazy and procrastinating, or do you want me not to rush you? How long do you think it will take for this project to succeed? This and that. Gretel raised his eyes and scanned the ceiling of the room, refusing to look at the other person. Materials science has always been a sinkhole. How many large companies, scientific research institutes, and thousands of people have devoted their lives to it, but only a few results have been produced in the end. Half depends on investment and half depends on luck. If you are not lucky, you will not be able to produce anything for 3 to 5 years. And what about the Magic Council? There are 3 laboratories in total, dozens of people are working on it, and you want to produce results in a month. This is so lucky. Okay, don't worry about the project or not. Archmage Carlyle took a deep breath, tried his best to suppress all kinds of depression, and calmed down his tone. You should meditate for a few days first. Even if you can't advance immediately, it is good to increase your mental strength. After meditating, if you still have time, go to the laboratory and have a look. Don't put your energy into weird places. Even if you do a magic experiment, it's better than catching the dwarves and taking their temperatures one by one. Do not. Gretel screamed. He still has a lot of things to do. The X-ray images only showed about 10 people. The B ultrasound images haven't been drawn yet. There are also different levels, different physical combat abilities, and the impact on physiological indexes. He has just made the beginning of such a large project. Listen to me. Archmage Carlyle raised his hand, and two large transparent hands rose up from left to right and slowly closed them. Gretel is about to be caught in the middle. The meaning is very clear. If you don't meditate, I'll help you meditate. Teacher! Teacher! The office door opened with a bang. A young mage with acne on his face rushed in, dancing and dancing. The acne on the tip of his nose was bright red. We made it? What? Mithril. Mithril. We've made it? Archmage Carlyle's eyes narrowed. He subconsciously rushed to the door, took 2 steps, and braked urgently. You. Follow me. On the 375th floor of the Tower of Babel, in Laboratory 4, the crowd cheered. A translucent force field hand held a steel mesh, going around and around in front of the magicians. Every time it passed in front of a person, it must be deliberately turned over twice. The steel mesh was dotted with a lot of silver gray powder, which was no different from the mithril powder they had seen before. There is a pile of instruments lined up in the corner of the room. Scales, beakers, bottles, and jars. The good news keeps coming. After melting, it can condense into blocks. A metal block of the same size weighs the same as a mithril block. Excellent ductility. Magic conductivity is good. The appraisal feedback is mithril. High purity mithril. We did it. We did it. Each measurement elicited a cheer. The host of Laboratory Number 4, a female great magician with a magic level of up to 11, raised her hands in the air and couldn't help but turn in a circle. The hem of the magic robe was flying high, spinning into a colorful flower on the smooth floor of the laboratory. Even the 2 laboratories next door were shaken. The magicians put down their work, temporarily cut off the electric field, and joined the celebrating team. Finally made it? 3 routes were worked separately for more than a month, and they failed and failed again and again. Finally, someone finally made it. Even if someone is not in their group and someone eats meat, they can still drink soup. In the midst of this celebration, Gretel followed Archmage Carlyle into the laboratory. The older mages gathered around the teacher one after another, reporting, explaining, and demonstrating their achievements, making a fuss. The second and even third generation students had already started singing and dancing. When they saw Gretel coming, they couldn't help but drag him into the crowd. Come on, come on. Sing and dance. Greet. Let me go. You are so close to the electric field. There's strong acid on the table next to you. There is caustic soda. Help! He struggled for a long time, and was finally rescued from the crowd by Archmage Carlyle and dragged to Laboratory 6 next door. As soon as the force field door was closed, the Archmage smiled half-heartedly and sneered at him. Are you relieved now? Can you advance? Luck is really bad. In other words, the Magic Council's luck is really good. In just 1 month, they have made a breakthrough on such a troublesome project. However, his personal luck was not so good. At this moment, he happened to push the timing of advancement to the success of the project. But the loser cannot lose the battle. Greet tried hard to straighten the magic robe and raised his head high. How do you know this is what the project is all about? What's the meaning? The Archmage frowned. Across the open space 2 meters away, Greet looked directly at him and asked plausibly. Even if the method of electrolytic smelting of mithril is successful, how much production capacity will there be? In the past, it was stuck at the level of semi-finished products to finished products. Now, is it stuck at the level of ore to semi-finished products? I asked a few days ago, even if luck is well, we can only produce a few pounds of semi-finished products a day. Then what do you want? I have a lot of ideas. Gretel raised his head and turned around with a matter-of-fact expression. There are several nodes that need to be opened up in this project. It's over when I say it's over. He strode out. Go to the door, push again. Open the door. Gretel's prediction soon came true. The Magic Council's thirst for mithril is almost unlimited. As soon as the electrolysis smelting method was successful, all semi-finished products were immediately taken over by the council and transported to the Tower of Babel. 1 day, 2 days. Then, the dwarves' speed of refining semi-finished products could no longer keep up with the council's smelting speed. How can human power compare to magic? In the magic tower, the magicians adjusted the parameters, heated and powered up, and waited to collect the mithril powder. If one crucible is not enough, you can pass a few more or get a few more force field power supplies. In the forging area, only Old Zion can fish out suitable semi-finished products from the fire pool. Can it go faster? Can you get more? Can production be doubled? Day and night, Old Zion, who had been guarding the fire pool for 3 days, almost fell into the pool. Greet stepped into the smelting area at this time. The flames were blazing beside the fire pool. No strangers were allowed to enter, and he had no intention of getting close. There were 3 layers of shields on the body, and a cold-resistant and heat-resistant one on top, and a bottle of iced sugar salt water for myself. After being fully armed, he stood at the door from a distance and asked the braided bearded dwarf who first brought him in. "Why can't we get more? Is there not enough manpower? If the people who are fishing are not strong enough, I will ask the magician to set up a few more shields for everyone, and everyone can go up again." No, the main reason is that this fire pool is not good enough. Once the dwarves recognize someone, they really dig deep into their heart and soul, saying one thing and another. At this moment, the braided bearded dwarf tried his best to stand on tiptoes, pointed at the fire pool and explained to Gretel. "Look at this fire pool, it is golden yellow most of the time, and sometimes white. But white is not enough. Only when it is white and shiny can the ore be melted and good things can be fished out. You see, bubbles are coming out. It's going to explode soon, it's going to explode. Okay. It's now." More than a dozen steps away, the old dwarf stretched out his arm and skillfully fished it out from the center of the explosion. A bag of crystal clear, steaming things instantly rose out of the magma. "Greet, it turns out the temperature is really not high enough. I told you earlier. I'll do it." The data on working days are really bleak, I can't help but feel sad. Please subscribe, please monthly tickets, please recommend votes, please book reviews. Yesterday there were only 18 monthly tickets, and only 167 recommended votes. Single day subscriptions are the lowest this month. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 224. The dwarves in the entire mithril district looked at Gretel as if they were a savior. It was he who, risking his own life, rescued Elder Talbot. It was him who took over the task of the Magic Council to improve the method of mithril smelting. After he comes, the Magic Council can smelt mithril on its own without Elder Talbot having to work hard to use magic. It's him who now stands up and says, "Let me think of ways to increase the output of semi-finished products." Greet stood up with confidence, or seemed to be confident. Because the temperature of the fire pool, or furnace, or whatever, is not high enough, mithril semi-finished products cannot be stably produced. For this reason, Greet has already guessed, and has made many plans for this. Are they just these plans? Greet decided to try it manually first. He put a full set of magic defense on his body, carefully walked 5 meters away from the fire pool, and took out a tube of potassium permanganate. Lower your head, concentrate, adjust direction. Dragon breath hand. Fan-shaped, extremely high temperature white fire sprayed out against the magma and rolled past 1 meter in front of the old dwarf. The old dwarf quickly picked up the ore, stretched it into the white fire, and shook it gently. In just a moment, the long-handled spoon used to hold the ore burst into flames, the handle of the spoon burned off, and the ore sank into the magma with a dong sound. Well, Gretel quickly stopped casting spells and looked at the old dwarf awkwardly. Old Zion was unusually calm. He leaned over and picked up another long-handled spoon and fished a handful out of the magma. He bent his arms, looked down, and nodded with satisfaction. Not bad, very useful. He half turned around, stretched his arms, and handed the product in the spoon to Greet. The old dwarf's stocky body even bent a little, and the look he looked at Gretel contained at least 50% respect. Your Excellency, thank you for your help. As long as this flame continues to burn, doubling the production of mithril will certainly not be a problem. Gretel didn't get the meaning of his words at all. A spoonful of half-melted ore was stretched out in front of him, steaming hot air hit his face. Greet jumped back reflexively and took a few steps back. Don't come over here. My cold and heat resistance can't even withstand boiling water, and the magic defense on my body can't withstand molten steel. And, do you think I will stand here for 8 hours a day, cost the humanoid fire dragon? I'm not stupid. It is enough to verify that high temperature can help refining ore. The next thing can be done by machines, not by humans. Greet nodded to him casually, turned around and left. As I walked, I thought, so how do I increase the furnace temperature? What kind of furnace is used for making iron? Blast furnace? Open hearth? Converter? Forgive me that Gretel only knows these names, but has no idea what any of them look like. Even if you put the pictures in front of him and ask him to look at them repeatedly, he may not be able to connect them correctly. What does the inside of the furnace look like? Where does the fuel come in? Where does the ore come in? Where does the oxygen come in? Where does the molten iron come out? No, where does the mithril semi-finished product come out? Gretel once used a pen to smudge, and as a result, there were 7 or 8 messes on the paper. Also, the furnace seems to use refractory bricks. What are the composition and firing method of refractory bricks? I don't know, but of course, there are other ways to increase the combustion temperature. Like, fuel. Add gasoline, add diesel, add kerosene? Gretel didn't know if there was oil in the world. He had never seen it. Burning hydrogen? It was too dangerous, Gretel didn't want to blow himself up. Add thermite? Greet secretly reminded himself to remember to bring over the electrolytic smelting technology later and make some magnesium and aluminum for himself to play with. Therefore, among all the technical routes, the one that seems most likely to succeed only has 2 words left. Blow oxygen. How much to blow? Have no idea. What is the partial pressure of oxygen? Flow. Pressure. Have no idea. Blow from where? Do not know either. In Gretel's mind, there was only the word blow oxygen alone. As for how to blow, Greet took out a bottle of oxygen, saved during the process of making electrolyzed water, and pulled out his follower from behind. Is it possible to move, or blow, the gas in this bottle directly above the fire pool and make it come into contact with the magma? No problem. Aurora Walton is gearing up. He pointed casually, and the mouth of the bottle exploded. Before the oxygen in the bottle could escape, perhaps it had escaped but was invisible to the naked eye, the translucent force field rolled up, and a ball of white light suddenly exploded in the magma pool. That's it, the braided dwarf shouted, that's how big the fire is. Then, the white light flashed, gone, gone, gone. Half of the dwarves looked at Gretel, and half of the dwarves looked at Aurora, then followed Aurora's gaze and then looked at Gretel. Greet shrugged and took out another bottle of oxygen. This time, the old dwarf on the edge of the fire pool took a posture, his chest rose and fell, and the muscles on his arms stood high. He turned back to stare at Greet and nodded heavily. Come. The second time, open the oxygen bottle, cast a spell to transfer oxygen, and the flames rise. The old dwarf raced against time, shook the ore into the white fire, took it back to look at it, and sighed. No, the burning time is too short. It must be doubled at least. Mr. Master, is there anything you can do? Yes, there is. However, a large amount of oxygen is required and the airflow must be maintained. This is the time to test the industrial strength. There is a way. But this requires the support of the Parliament. Leave it to me and wait. Greed turned around and left. Return to the Tower of Babel and touch Laboratory 3 on the 375th floor. The laboratory was in a mess, and a new group of people had been working. The sinks, graphite rods, bottles and jars before had all disappeared. Probably because the electrolytic smelting has been successful, the project team has been cancelled, and the magicians have gone back to their homes to look for their mothers. Gretel was stunned. He stood at the door of the laboratory for 3 seconds and let out a scream. No. Where are the people? Come back here. What about the byproducts of the electrolysis process? How to use magic to vacuum the most efficiently? Use low temperature and high pressure to separate air and produce oxygen. Have those magicians got their livers out? At the end of the day, leave 2 pure oxygen tanks for me. He turned around in circles at the door of the laboratory, and then in circles, like a melted candle, and squatted down dejectedly. Aurora Warden came over quickly to pull him. Boss, it's okay. I'll take you to find someone. They're all my senior brothers and sisters, and I'm familiar with them. Oro, Gretel looked at him with dull eyes. Tell me, why do they run so fast? They don't even write a paper. They can write several papers just on the separation and measurement of air. Why did they run away? That, boss, Aurora scratched her hair. Perhaps they are waiting for you to write? After all, it was you who proposed the plan. They can't write without permission and rob you of the honors and rewards you deserve. Gretel. He later remembered that there was something called a corresponding author. The boss is responsible for determining the topic, finding funding, accepting projects, and controlling the overall situation. Under the guidance of the boss, capable researchers are responsible for leading the team and working independently. Of course, such researchers are most likely to be qualified to be the first author, rather than the second author and third author. Let them write. After they finish writing, it's okay to show it to me. I'll just call you the corresponding author. What I want now is oxygen. Oxygen. As long as my patients can take in oxygen and have enough oxygen to take in when they have difficulty breathing or during surgery, whoever's name is on those papers will not care about them at all. The project team that was on the verge of dissolution, or in other words, had been disbanded, once again started to move efficiently. After learning that Gretel had a way to improve the output efficiency of semi-finished products, magicians immediately followed his request and rushed up and down. Build a force field box and fill it with as much air as possible until no more air can be squeezed in. Then, throw freezing ray, frost breath, ice ball, northern wind. Good. It's starting to liquefy. Turn it all into liquid. Then raise the temperature a little bit. Boom. At the foot of Igor Peak, the stone flat that is exclusive to the Thunderhorn and is specially used for experiments with explosive hazards shook. The next moment, a bright light shone from the Tower of Babel, and Archmage Carlyle penetrated the mysterious lock and flew down from the peak at high speed. What are you doing? Gretel wants that fire gas. All the ones we made before have been used up. Facts have proved that without a great magician above level 13 present, relying solely on force field barriers to liquefy air or something like that is really not something you can do casually. Regardless, Gretel got what he wanted. Archmage Carlyle took the lead and took the 3 highest level students to cast spells together. Finally, without the blessing of the Mage Tower, pure oxygen was separated with bare hands. Another great magician personally took action and created a thick steel cylinder using strong steel mixed with fine gold, which was used to make knights' weapons. After filling, it was sent to the Mithril district. The Alchemy Guild of the School of Change, the great magician responsible for maintaining the magic circle, buried pipes in the wall to blow the oxygen in the cylinder directly above the fire pool. Oh, by the way, the pipe is still retractable. It extends when oxygen is blown, and retracts when oxygen is not blown, so as to prevent oxygen from spraying out from the top of the cave, which is too wasteful. Mithril ore smelting, the first oxygen-blowing experiment, begins. Gretel is in the middle and giving the orders. Aurora Wharton sat in the corner of the mithril forging room, hung a barbarian power on herself, and held the rotating valve of the oxygen cylinder with both hands. Wizard Dumfries stood in another corner and pressed the button protruding from the pipe on the top of the cave. The air hissed. Soon, the lava rolled around the edge of the fire pool, and the flames turned from gold to white and rose upwards. The next step is to experiment again and again to find the right flow rate. The Magic Council replaces the gas bottles at regular intervals and takes back the used gas bottles. This is a job that everyone can do. Oh, by the way, you have to be careful. Don't let the gas cylinder explode. Gretel hummed and walked out. Not long after, the dwarves burst into heartfelt cheers in the cave behind them. Ah, by the way. Where's my oxygen? Leave a bottle of oxygen for me. Another 3,000 words, including the 3,000 words at noon, the fifth 10,000 reward update has been completed. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, please review books. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 225. The news that mithril production began to increase spread along the forging area to the Alchemy Guild, and then to the top leaders of the School of Change. And another way is to complete the research and development work. At least the great magicians of the plasticity system who have completed part of the research and development work also uploaded the news all the way to the legendary Masters of Thunderhorn. Therefore, at the regular review meeting this week, the matter of greed was inevitably discussed. The magic smelting of mithril, no, the electrolytic smelting is completed. Yes, mithril has been successfully produced. It is said that the production of semi-finished products is no longer a problem. Yes, the dwarves are working day and night now. It is said that the output of semi-finished products alone has increased 5 times compared to before. Gret Nordmark, is this project finished? Should we discuss rewards? This. What's the matter? You were very generous when you announced the project, but you feel unhappy when you calculate the rewards. Let me tell you, even if you give him a proportion of the increased mithril production, that's what he should do. Well, give it 100 is one part enough. It's not that, it's mainly because Gretel Nordmark hasn't submitted the final report yet. Why is he still dawdling? Can't write a report? Find someone to help him write it? Greet was almost dying of grief. Since the completion of electrolytic smelting, the dwarves' work pressure has suddenly increased, and their working hours have also suddenly lengthened. The result is that instead of working for 2 hours, taking a drink and taking a break, it has become a process of working for 4 hours, going out for lunch, taking a break, and then continuing to work. Why did another one faint? I said this is not okay. Wait. Don't give him beer. Don't. Another dwarf came out with his face flushed and dizzy. He rushed to the bar with S-shaped steps and took a glass of cold beer. Tons, 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 tons. Hey. It's fallen again. Bernard. Help me drag him. Drag him to the back and fill him with sugar and salt water. Oro, blow some air. The dwarves are indeed physically strong, but no matter how strong they are, they can't stand up to this. Gretel glanced at the notebook in his hand. In 3 days, the number of people suffering from heat stroke surged from 2 per day to 20 per day. What about another day? What about 2 more days? As a doctor, even if he is a clinician rather than a labor security officer in an industrial enterprise, Greet also said that he cannot tolerate such poor working conditions and the environment where workers are dying in large numbers. The important thing is that now he has a voice. Greet found Master Tarbot with a sullen face. Freed from the work of producing 5 high-level magic spells every day and trying his best to produce mithril, Master Talbot's complexion improved a lot. Although his hair and beard are still white, his face has become more rosy, and the skin on his arms is no longer dry and shriveled, and looks like it is tightly wrapped around the bones. When Gretel came over, Master Talbot had just finished a healing spell. The treated dwarf got up wet, poured a bucket of stream water on his forehead, turned around and rushed back to the forging area. Master Tarbot hesitated to speak, and in the end he just sighed slightly and watched the dwarf go away. Greet sat down beside him. He and the old dwarf looked at the gate of the forging area together. It wasn't until the dwarf with heat stroke disappeared inside the door that he coughed and spoke softly. "Master, we can't go on like this. More and more people are suffering from heat stroke. If this continues, everyone will fall ill in batches. Do you think I don't know? But we are running out of money." "How come?" The old dwarf sighed. He let go of his hand, and a few broken white beards flew up from his hand. A look of pity flashed across the old man's face. He looked at his fingertips and frowned. "The price of mithril has dropped. The processing fee has dropped from 500 gold coins per pound to 200 gold coins. Although semi-finished products can be sold for money, they are only 20 gold coins per pound. The gap can only be filled by everyone's hard work." "Phil, you have to know that most of the food and ale that the compatriots in the settlements eat and drink are bought back by those of us who work outside. The Magic Council has mastered the core technology. The prices of high-end industrial products dropped instantly, the dwarves' income decreased, and they had to produce more raw materials and low-end industrial products." Greet immediately understood the ins and outs of this, and his whole body collapsed. He felt like 2 big words stood up on his forehead. Accomplice. It's still red and black in color, everyone can legally PK, and the explosion rate is very high. But can't the semi-finished products be sold more expensively? Only dwarves can smelt semi-finished products. The old dwarf continued to smile bitterly. If the original method of the dwarves is used, a fire pool can produce up to 5 or 6 pounds of semi-finished products in a day. Now I can sell more than 50 pounds a day, but because I use the gas provided by the Magic Council, the selling price cannot go up at all. In the words of Parliament, this kind of gas requires 3 great magicians to work together. Gretel was silent. However, the electrolytic smelting technology has been developed, and it is obviously impossible to stuff it back now. All he can do is improve the welfare of the dwarves and strengthen labor protection. For example, go talk to the Wizard of Dumfries. Supply them with ice water. Master Dumfries shook his head when he heard this. "Gretel, I know you care about those dwarves, but, if you have to supply ice water to so many dwarves, a 5th level mage like me can't do anything else for a day without just losing the freeze ray. Then, what about supplying them with salt soda?" "What is salt soda?" Gretel was silent. Fortunately, he still remembered the recipe of salt soda, which was nothing more than water, sugar, salt, citric acid, baking soda, and so on. Everything else is easy. I can't make citric acid for a while, so I just use vinegar instead. After tinkering in the laboratory for a long time, he finally made a satisfactory salt soda, and then went to find Master Dumfries. "It's a good idea, but where does the money come from?" "According to your calculation, a dwarf needs 4 bottles of salt soda a day. Okay, let's fold it in half and count it as 2 bottles. The dwarves in the entire forging area need 4 pounds of salt a day. 4 pounds of baking soda, 2 pounds of sugar. Even if the water is fetched from the stream at the door and the firewood is cut directly on the mountain, the labor is not counted as money. If you add it all up, you will still need at least 1 gold coin a day. The Parliament does not have this extra budget. Will you pay for it or should I? 1 gold coin each, 30 gold coins a month. This amount of money is not a lot of money, and it is definitely not a small amount of money. Gretel is now a level 2 magician and a level 4 arcanist. His monthly fixed income, which is the monthly allowance given to him by the Magic Council, is less than 30 gold coins. It would be easier if you have a fixed budget. There is no fixed budget. If you take money out of your personal pocket, you can only do it occasionally, for example, to get a small amount of funding for the Magic Council's research project. Spending money year after year is not the way to do things. Well, Gretel was stumped. In the end, it was Master Tarbert who solved this problem. With the prestige of the master, he solved it in a simple and crude way. Just let them drink less. One by one, they will know how to drink. Deduct 2 cups of ale from each person's daily salary, and give it all to the tavern owner. Let him be responsible for hiring people. It's not like there are no women in the forging area. Make salt soda and deliver it every 2 hours. It will be steamy. You are not allowed to drink alcohol in the forging area, but you can drink salt soda. Sip a large bottle, burp, and exhale a lot of gas, making your whole body feel comfortable. The number of heat strokes dropped from 20 per day to 2 per day. Everyone is happy. The tavern owner has solved the work of several cooks, the dwarves have solved the problem of heat stroke, the production efficiency of the forging area has improved, and the Dumfries mage has added a bright spot to his resume. Only Greet gained nothing. The soda business is not profitable at all. The price at which the tavern owner supplies soda water is based on the cost line, and there is not even a copper penny in profit. From beginning to end, Greet paid for the research and development expenses, and not even a penny fell into his own pocket. Oh, if I can say that there is a gain, it is that the title of Friend of the Dwarves has been painted with a thick stroke of gold. If friendship could be quantified, his reputation would probably have gone from friendly to respected in one go. But Gretel doesn't care about making money. With the problem of heat stroke resolved, he returned to the laboratory and resumed his research work. The next goal is to remove the penicillin. Well, the Mycobacterium tuberculosis is not particularly sensitive to penicillin. He may also need to remove the streptomycin. Why is bacterial culture so slow? Gretel stood among the petri dishes in the laboratory, holding his head and wailing. At this moment, he missed his teacher very much. During the dysentery epidemic that year, Elder Irwin once released magical magic to induce the targeted growth of various bacteria. If there are elders around, this magical technique can speed up the experiment process 100 times. But Gretel doesn't. Not only does he not know how to do it, not even Pastor Matthew, who has advanced to the 5th level, can't do it. As for Elder Wood, he is far away in Oak Ridge, dozens of miles away from here. Greet was too embarrassed to conduct an experiment for himself, so he dragged him here all the way. Birth, birth, birth. Greet held the oak staff and muttered feebly. More than half a year has passed, and the 2 green leaves on the top of the oak stick have become exactly the same, dark green in color and hard in texture. Judging from the green leaf form alone, Gretel has almost reached the peak of his level 2 priest and can find a way to upgrade. However, upgrading may not be useful. Greet stretched out his hand, a light green light fell, and several small mushrooms suddenly grew in the petri dish. 7 or 8 light yellow and shiny little umbrella caps are spread all over the petri dish, which is particularly pleasing to the eye. Gretel's face darkened. It's like this again, it's like this again. Ever since he learned to use vines to grow straws, he no longer had any barriers to growing plants. As long as he held the seeds in his hand, he could always produce a pipe or a wooden pole. As for the failure to grow into a complete plant, Greet said that is not a problem and he is not surprised anyway. However, promoting the growth of bacteria will not work. If you throw a magical spell, the whole petri dish will be filled with growth. If you are unlucky, it will also spread to the next door. How to separate and purify this? All crowded together. With such a fast growth rate, penicillin won't crush them to death. Gretel began to pull his hair out in frustration. I haven't cut my hair for more than half a year, and the short hair that was originally close to a board size has already covered my ears, and it feels a bit tactile when pulled. Greet pulled one off and twisted it around his fingertips. With a distracted look, he passed it through the gaps between his fingers. This shooting caliber is a bit too big. It would be nice if it could be smaller, if the impact point could be controlled to the size of a pinhead, the size of a hair. Greet suddenly jumped up. He hurriedly flipped through the space bag and found the silver bell given by the master of the transformation department. He shook it twice and recited the incantation. Time is money, my friend. Oh, it's not easy. You finally remembered me. A strange questioning voice came out, and the bells came out together with the blue smoke. Thanks to a dark mercenary from another world Janet for the 999 book coins. Only 700 subscriptions have been added up to this point. I am afraid that the new subscriptions added today will be finished. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 226. Chapter 226, Isn't Greet Upgraded? Mr. Chun, leader of the Alliance, adds 6 updates. As the gremlin muttered, Greet took out his money bag and lined up the gold coins one by one. In terms of contribution points to his name, he now has more than 1,500, which can be considered a rich man, but he only has more than 200 gold coins. There are many accounts and little income. So far, there is no stable source of income that can regularly obtain gold coins. This was the result of working in a treatment center for a while and saving up some cash. After arriving in Neva City, the Magic Council provides food, accommodation, and research. All conditions can be considered favorable. The problem is that the Magic Council uses contribution points to distribute rewards, and Gretel is reluctant to convert the contribution points into gold coins. There are only 258 gold coins left. Greet frowned. There are 200 coins in a bag and 50 coins in a bag. These two bags are packed separately in cowhide bags and are not easily taken out to spend. In the lambskin bag containing change, there are yellow gold coins, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, in total, there are only 8 left. I don't know how much more I will spend tonight. Greet swept most of the gold coins into the purse, picked up the only one left outside, and handed it to the little monster. The gold coins disappeared into the blue smoke, and the little monster's figure changed from illusion to solidity. He held the bell in his hand and jumped down. Greet immediately handed over a glass rod. Come on, stretch it twice as long and make it even. Even. The little devil clasped his hands together, palms facing each other, and sparks flew straight upward. The glass rod gradually softened in the flames. The little monster separated his hands, and the softened glass rod gradually stretched and stretched. Hey, it's bent. No. I want it to be straight. Fortunately, the glass rod can be reheated and redrawn. The little monster waved his hands, burning the glass rod horizontally, vertically, pulling it horizontally, and pulling it vertically. After tossing it back and forth for a long time, he finally pulled out a glass rod with a diameter of 2 mm and a length of 15 cm. Greet took it in his hand and waved it. It didn't break. He was very pleased. Not bad, not bad. Let me try it. He held the head of the glass rod at an angle like a pen, touched the end on the culture medium, and took a gentle breath. Close your eyes, adjust your breathing, clear your mind, activate your magic. The clear and transparent green light flows from the fingertips to the glass rod, then flows along the glass rod to the culture medium, and lights up slightly. As if magic had been cast, or in other words, magic was originally part of the extraordinary power, a circle of small colonies bloomed on the trembling jelly-like culture medium. Yet, Gretel cheered softly. Until now, he still doesn't quite understand the way magical energy is transmitted. He can only simply understand the part seen with the naked eye as light, and as expected, this beam of green light extends along the direction of the glass rod and does not escape too much to the outside environment. It is feasible to use this method to restrain the magic of birth. Gold coins, get me another one. I want one as thick as a hair, gold coins. The gremlin is gone. When the duration is over, the little monster turns into blue smoke and retracts into the bell. It has to be recharged before it can come out. The second time I tossed the glass was not as smooth as the first time. The little monster pulled horizontally and vertically until it turned into blue smoke and retracted into the bell, but it still couldn't pull out a glass fiber that was thin enough to meet Gretel's requirements. Either it's too thick, it's crooked, or it snaps halfway and breaks. 1 gold coin is wasted, 2 gold coins are wasted. Seeing that there were very few gold coins left in his coin purse, Greet racked his brains and finally came up with another possible way to succeed. Gold coins, you make a plate with pores, very, very fine, so fine that it can only pass through a hair, and then burn the glass, pour the glass liquid up. Let the glass liquid flow down through the pores, and then squeeze it gently from the top, and let it fall down on its own. By the way, we also need to build a barrier around it to prevent the glass fiber from being blown askew by the wind. It must be admitted that the ability of gold coins in fine processing is indeed commendable. After Greet's guidance, after 3 failed attempts, he actually pulled out a few hair-thick glass strands. Well, maybe it's thicker than a hair, but Gretel can't tell the difference clearly even if he only observes it with his naked eyes. The gold coin's work doesn't stop there. He pulled out the glass wire, and according to Greet's request, he inserted the glass wire into the back of the scalpel, the center of the thin silver rod, the edge of the blood vessel clamp, etc. It is no longer a dream to use therapy, rather than electrocautery, to stop the bleeding while performing an incision. Just, happy. The corners of Gretel's mouth curled up. He held a silver rod and pointed it at the petri dish again. This time, the bacterial colony in the petri dish was smaller than last time. And it didn't consume the entire magic. The consumption of 1 spawn is, at best, only half of that of a level 0 divine spell. Gretel was so happy that she floated around the room, spinning around in circles without her feet touching the ground. If it weren't for his limited athletic ability and inappropriate shoes, he could tap the ground with his toes and spin 32 times on the spot. He has a powerful piece of equipment. He can now do bacterial culture with his bare hands. Very good. No need to worry about purifying penicillin anymore. As long as it is separated, he will just promote it. Give birth. Give birth again. After drifting for a while, Gretel gradually calmed down. He threw the last 3 gold coins in his coin bag and asked the little monster to pull out hundreds of glass wires in one breath and embed them one by one into silver rods, copper rods, steel rods, or any other metal rods. Seeing that there was only a silver coin and a copper coin left in the money bag, he did not feel distressed and went to the steamer to add more wood to light the fire. It took Greet about an hour to sterilize all the hundreds of metal rods with high-temperature steam to ensure sterilization. He picked them up one by one and started to breed bacteria in the petri dish. Release the magic, change one, release the magic again, change another, release again, change again. Even if he consumes less than 0 level magic each time and repeats it hundreds of times, Greet still feels dizzy and his temples are throbbing with pain. He covered the last petri dish, staggered out of the laboratory holding the oak staff. Close the airlock, rinse, walk to the buffer zone, change clothes, and wash again. After all the procedures were completed, Gretel sat down in the outside lounge, slowly closed his eyes, and entered a meditative state. In the core of meditation, there is only the last step left to shape the muscles of the whole body. The striated muscle is completed, the smooth muscle is completed, the left atrium, left ventricle, right atrium, and right ventricle are all completed. Gretel closed his eyes and began to use his mental power to build the pericardium bit by bit. The pericardium is a membranous sac that covers the surface of the heart and serves to protect the heart from excessive enlargement of the cardiac chambers. It looks like just an approximately cone-shaped membrane sac, but it is subdivided into several layers, which is not careless at all. Gretel first shaped the inner layer, the serosal layer, against the heart. The serosal layer is relatively thin, smooth, and moist, and is divided into two parts, the visceral layer and the parietal layer. The pericardial cavity in the middle is filled with pericardial fluid. After the parietal layer is shaped, the outer pericardial layer, which is dense connective tissue, is shaped against the parietal layer. Tough and compact, with little stretchability. Just these three floors with different structures and shapes made Gretel sweat all over. The last section of the pericardium is shaped and circled around the aortic root, finally completed. The next step is to extend the blood vessels from the heart. The aorta, pulmonary artery, pulmonary vein, superior and inferior vena cava, and the many blood vessels extending from them are carefully modified one by one to make them closer to the state of the body. Ah, so tired. Greet leaned back, spread out his hands and feet, and lay in a big shape on the bed. Just when he lay down, his spine suddenly twitched, and his whole body bounced up as if it was electrified. That power, that familiar yet unfamiliar power, that gentle yet grand power, came quietly in the dark. Greet panicked and squirmed backwards on the bed, letting his vest stick to the corner of the wall. As soon as I took the posture, the power had already rushed into the meditation environment, like rain, nourishing every inch of the muscles built in the void. White light flows silently in the void. The standing human figure began to move again. This time, the tendons tightened, the muscles contracted and stretched, driving the bones to move and change postures. The diaphragm muscle rises and falls, and the smooth muscle tightens and relaxes, and then tightens, creating a state of peristalsis of the internal organs. Even the newly completed heart began to beat evenly and powerfully with a thump and a thump. In the core of meditation, bones and muscles are connected into one body, and then the spirit feeds back into the body. There was a soft sound of boom. It's like a soap bubble being popped, or like a balloon being blown to its limit and finally exploding. When Gretel opened his eyes again, his connection with the world became even closer. He knew without anyone telling him that his spiritual power level, along with his priest level, had firmly reached level 3. Also, he was lucky this time. After the muscle building was completed, he was upgraded immediately without making him wait. Did he throw out enough things this time? Do the math, he has popularized the entire set of junior high school chemistry, electrolytic smelting, liquid air separation and purification, and even microscopes. Greet secretly wrote down the conjecture promote technology equals upgrade and let himself fall asleep. When I woke up the next morning, I wanted to devote myself energetically to cultivating bacteria, but there was a loud knock on the door. Who? Boss, there is someone looking for you at the door. The savages began to shout harshly. Since Aurora Warden joined, the barbarians have also learned his name, and call him Boss Gretel when they have nothing to do. Greet opened the door and went out, only to see a group of cavalry standing neatly outside the wall, headed by a somewhat familiar knight, surrounded by a black carriage with the logo of the Magic Council but no other decorations. Who are you? Hello, Mr. Gretel Nordmark. The knight took a step forward and saluted solemnly. I am the Knight of Balin, a follower of the Archmage Carlyle. I came here to pick you up on the Archmage's order. There have been espionage activities by the Lord of Radiance in the city recently. The Archmage has ordered you to return to the Mage Tower immediately. Oh, Bahrain Knight. I remember you, Gretel suddenly realized. After the battle against the Lord of Glory, some people in their team were hunted down the mountain. Archmage Carlyle told the Bahrain Knight to go deal with it. Speaking of which, I also accepted his affection, but I haven't reciprocated it yet. Are you leaving now? Greet looked at the laboratory reluctantly. The Balin Knight saluted again. Yes, it's urgent. The Archmage means, please return immediately. There is no point in resisting someone who is following an order. Greet got into the carriage obediently, and the Balin Knight closed the window so that his face would not be exposed. We walked all the way to the foot of the mountain, changed to a small train and climbed to the top of the mountain. Before we even entered the office, we heard Archmage Carlyle being angry. He didn't know who he was talking to. It's already here. The project is not finished, the paper is not written, and you are still running around outside. If you don't meditate, how can you upgrade? Well. Gretel raised and lowered his hand to knock on the door. He didn't know whether he should go in immediately or find a guest room first and stay there for a few days to avoid the limelight. However, the beautiful walnut door opened with a swipe, and Aurora Warden ran out as if fleeing, almost bumping into Gretel. In full view of everyone, Gretel bravely walked in and slowly raised his hand. It seems that I just upgraded yesterday. Another 3,000 words. In fact, including the ones in the morning, a total of 6,800 words have been updated today, so it counts as an extra chapter. I feel like I'm about to be drained. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, please review books. Asking for various. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 227. Wow. The Archmage has changed his face, he has changed his face, he has changed his face. Gretel couldn't help but open his eyes wide. Among the high-ranking wizards of the Magic Council, the one he dealt with the most was the Archmage Carlyle. Ask questions, borrow books, magic scrolls, experimental conditions, room equipment, and alchemy materials. Altogether, I have seen them at least 30 or 40 times, which adds up to more than 10 hours. However, it was also the first time that he observed that the Archmage also had the ability to change his face. First it turns red, then blue, then black, then red again. If there is an emotion meter hanging next to it, the displayed text on it will probably keep changing at a rate of twice per second. Excited. Heartbroken. Joy. Depressed. Relax. Confuse. There are a row of students on both sides standing with their heads bowed and their eyes looking at their mouths looking at their noses, and their noses looking at their hearts. They act like I didn't see anything, I didn't hear anything, pretending to be stupid. Greet looked left and right, then moved toward the rear of the group on the right at the speed of light, and then stood up straight, acting as if he was harmless. Archmage Carlyle. Archmage Carlyle laughed out loud at him. He waved the students away and called Greet to him alone, squinting his eyes and scanning them up and down. Mom. Greet shuddered slightly. The feeling of being scanned by spiritual power is very strange, like a cool breeze blowing by, or like drizzle falling on the head. He raised his eyes slightly, trying to chase the spiritual power, but a large pile of books and scrolls fell in front of him. Now that you have upgraded, live in the tower for a while and learn all these. Don't leave the tower until you have learned all the second-level spells. But. What? Archmage Carlyle frowned. I've given you the book and you still don't want to learn? Do you know how many magicians like you have to work hard and complete tasks diligently for several years before they can save contribution points to redeem magic after advancing? Some schools of thought are unique, or for magic that is unique to the mage organization, you may not be able to redeem it if you have contribution points. But, I upgraded to the priest level, hey. Archmage, don't be angry. Don't be angry. I don't get angry when others are angry, but when I get sick there is no one to help me. No, it's because I am angry because I have high blood pressure. I don't have any medicine at hand, so I can't save you. Archmage Carlyle shook with anger. After careful mental scanning, Gretel's mental power has indeed changed, and it has obviously advanced. But it is not impossible to say that the priest's level has been upgraded but the magician's level has not been. Let's go. Go to the meditation room and take a look. I use my contribution points. They took the elevator straight down to the third floor. In the primary meditation room, the intensity on the spar changed from pink to vermilion, from vermilion to deep red. In a moment, it jumped lightly and turned into a light orange. The orange became darker and darker, like the citrus hanging on the branches in autumn becoming more and more mature. Finally, the numbers on the spar stabilized. 35. On the first day of advancement, it jumped to 35. In other words, 1/3 of the journey has been completed. Archmage Carlyle looked at Gretel with eyes that were filled with joy and anger. The good news is that this guy has really good qualifications. If he hadn't had excellent qualifications and rich accumulation, he wouldn't have risen so much as soon as he advanced. What makes him angry is, why is he holding on to the pastor? Can't we just concentrate on learning magic? It's only been a long time since I arrived at the Magic Council, but this is already a great achievement. If you focus on magic, let alone the 3rd level mage, you may even be promoted to the 4th level. You meditate here first. Meditate. Whether it's a priest or a mage, first improve your spiritual power. Consolidate what you just advanced. Archmage Carlyle slammed the door and left. In the meditation room, Gretel threw himself on the door and hammered hard. Let me out. Let me out. Hey, at least brush my own badge. I'm not short of contribution points. After hammering twice, the door of the meditation room remained motionless. I don't know how high the authority of Archmage Carlyle is. In short, Gretel really can't pull or hammer open the door he closed. However, the conveyor box next to it buzzed, and a food box full of food appeared in the box, with a fragrant aroma. I don't know how to eat. I want to go out. I don't want to be locked up here. Wow, it smells so good. The aroma lingers in the room for a while, like a little hand scratching and scratching, making people restless. Gretel sat down and stood up and sat down again, and finally took out the food box and ate all the fried cod. He sat upright in the center of the room and began to meditate. Well, first construct the core of meditation, starting from the left ventricle, the aorta. The initial segment of the aorta is the ascending aorta, which runs obliquely forward and to the right, reaching the level of the second sternocostal joint on the right side. Done. It's easy to draw a rough outline, but it's a big trouble to build the details. The inner diameter of the aorta is generally 25 mm, and the artery wall thickness is 2 mm, which is divided into adventitia, media, and intima. The wall is thick, rich in elastic fibers, and has obvious elasticity and expansibility. Come, let's simulate heart ejection. Bang. It's not elastic enough, it explodes, it's unqualified. Again. Gretel was concentrating in the meditation room and completely forgetting himself. Anyway, there is food, drink, and abundant magic elements. In order to facilitate the long-term fight of the rich magician, the meditation room is also equipped with a bed and a bathroom. Put the dirty clothes in the transfer box, and someone will naturally collect them and clean them. and it was someone else's card that was swiped. Of course, it doesn't matter even if he swipes his own card. Greed said that now that he has money, he can afford it. Archmage Carlyle was not so calm. The data didn't increase on the first day, it didn't matter, it was normal. It didn't increase on the second day, it wasn't that fast, until the seventh day, Gretel's mental power value didn't move. What has he been doing these past few days? He's not sleeping, is he? Or is it because the magician's level has not been upgraded, and his mental strength really cannot be increased? He walked up and down the teacher's room, making a loud sound on the floor. Master Deckard raised his monocle, and there was a crackling sound in the lens, and a small electric light flashed. What's wrong? Are you so anxious now? Be patient, every magician has his own path. For example, if I didn't let you go to revenge and kill people back then, you would have been stuck at the big level for at least another year. Bar. Archmage Carlyle resigned. When he returned to the office, he saw the vice president of the Alchemy Union and the editor-in-chief of the Philosopher's Stone, an old man who liked to wear work clothes every day, pacing back and forth at his door, hands behind his back. Seeing him return, he came up and caught him. Where's Gretel? Let him out. I have something to ask him about. I've finished the microscope, and here's the paper he promised. Archmage Carlyle, let go. However, he really couldn't handle the opponent. The old man in overalls is a level 15 magician, and he himself is level 14, even though the difference is only one level. Among magicians, this is a big difference in combat effectiveness. Starting from level 15, you can already cast level 8 magic. Level 14 can only cast level 7 magic. One person can hit at least 2 or 3 of them. Not to mention that he is an alchemist from the plasticity department, and the opponent is an alchemist from the transformation department. He deals with wrenches, hammers, and golems on a daily basis. The muscles under the work clothes are much stronger than him. The two struggled in the office for a long time, and Archmage Carlyle was almost picked up by the other party and shook off a pile of parts. With his force value being crushed, he could only agree to the other party's conditions and release Gretel. The old man in work clothes waved his hand, and 3 wooden boxes 1.5 feet long, 2 feet high, fell silently and lined up in a row in front of Greed. A single-cylinder microscope, a binoculars, and a binoculars with a turntable. I've finished it here, where is your paper? I'm studying it, Greed answered cheerfully. The correct experimental method has been found, and it still needs to be cultured, separated, and verified. When I return to the laboratory, give me another month. Then do it. I'm waiting for you. No, Archmage Carlyle raised his hand to stop him. The magic badge activated the authority in the mage tower, and the electric light intertwined, instantly sealing the door of the mage tower. The spies of the Lord of Radiance are operating outside. He can't leave the mage tower. It's not safe. That's the boat, the old man laughed. As the vice president of the Alchemy Union, his source of information is much better informed than Gretel's, and he revealed Carlyle's background when he opened his mouth. Come on, isn't it just that the patrol caught a ship carrying spies at sea? It's not like he didn't catch the spy, so why are you so vigilant? I see, you just found a reason to lock him up, so that he can advance with peace of mind and stop doing his job outside. But there are still people on that ship who escaped. And the other party's contact person and stronghold in Nevis have not been found. The Parliament is searching now. For people like him, it is safer to stay at the top of the mountain. With a finger, on the mage badge on Gretel's chest, 4 white rings squeezed inward one after another. The 2 bronze stars among them were pitiful, huddled together, and they were squeezed into almost no space. It's not bad at all. Others are not here for him. It's better to be safe. The 2 great magicians, one relying on their geographical advantage and the other relying on their level, were glaring at each other. Greet looked left and right, then weakly raised a hand. But the Archmage keeps locking me in the Mage Tower, and I really can't advance. I estimate that by the time I finish this project, I will almost be able to become a third-level mage. Then study it here. No. It must be in the laboratory down the mountain. If something happens here, everyone will die. Gretel jumps. Archmage Carlyle crossed his arms and raised his chin. Prove it to me. Prove it, prove it. Greet strode out, walked around the peak twice, and picked a handful of dirt at the most crowded place. Then, add water, shake, take the bacterial suspension, add culture medium, and activate the magic. Growth, microscopic observation of colonies, isolation, and growth again. After several rounds, mix the cultured bacteria into the grass leaves and put them into the rabbit cage. Within a few hours, the rabbits developed diarrhea, vomiting, dehydration and other symptoms to varying degrees. After 24 hours of observation, half of the 10 healthy adult rabbits were dead and the other half were dying. Believe me, I can make 10 different kinds of plague seeds without duplicates. Gretel looked at the two archmages sincerely. It's transmitted through water sources, it's transmitted through sneezing and coughing, it's transmitted through broken fingers. To study this thing, you really have to do it at the foot of the mountain, in an open area, away from people. There are no isolation and protective conditions on the mountain. What if I make something, if it's leaked, the entire Igor Peak might be wiped out. Thanks, and it doesn't matter if I read the book 100 times and refuse to reward it, I will give you 100 starting coins. There were so few book reviews yesterday. You all don't love me anymore. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, please review books. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 228. Chapter 228. Gretel Plague Company Nordmark arrives. Mr. Chun, leader of the Alliance, adds 7 updates. Faced with the bloody facts, some rabbits actually spit out pink bubbles. Gretel was finally sent down the mountain. The old man in overalls escorted him to the train station, following him step by step, reluctant to leave. You should hurry up. We have already made 30 high-precision microscopes. Everything that has been magnified 100 times has been sold. No one will buy anything that has a higher magnification. I'm just waiting for your paper to come out to trick those guys from Black Crow Swamp. Gretel. You have to speak conscientiously. What a pit. Please translate for me, what is the pit of? Given the size of the bacteria, it can only be seen under a microscope. Only by increasing the magnification to 1000 times can we identify the characteristics of bacteria. Only by developing bacterial staining, various testing methods, and animal experiments can we determine which bacteria caused which disease. I provide them with research tools, pave the way for them, and make some money myself. Isn't this the best of both worlds? He also said it was a trap. Where is the trap? There was a carriage when he went there. After he came back, several carriages came to the laboratory one after another. An alchemist specially sent him a custom-made shadowless lamp, installed it in a separate dissecting room, and debugged it for more than half an hour. Another alchemist brought 2 space bags, one bottle after another, and put down all the dyes that could be found on the market and in the laboratory, as well as all the liquids and solids that can be dyed, as well as alcohol, sulfuric acid, and nitric acid. A whole bunch of drugs. The third alchemist who came to the door was ordered to settle with Gretel. The shadowless lamp had not been sold yet, and the microscope was settled with contribution points. In addition, Gretel received a total of 87 gold coins and 5 silver coins. 9 copper coins, a share of pencil sales. It must be said that the production and sales capabilities of the Alchemist Guild are truly outstanding. Oops. Rich again. There are gold coins again. You can make things again. No, you can make money to make mills and ghosts work, and gold coins to work. Hearing the sound of jingling coins, Gretel was overjoyed. He had just finished packing his things, and soon the fourth, fifth, and sixth vehicles arrived. This time it was not a carriage, but a human-pulled flatbed truck. There was a cart full of rabbits, a cart full of rabbit feed, a cart full of seaweed, and a few large pieces of beef and mutton on top. The color was bright, and it looked like they had just been killed today. Ah, how much does this cost? Bernard's eyes sparkled next to him. Greet glanced at him, pursed her lips, and took out her wallet with heartache. My gold coins, my little money, have to say goodbye before they are warm. This, you don't need to pay for it, you don't need to pay for it. The boss who followed the escort hurried forward, nodded and bowed, and waved his hands repeatedly. The council has already paid. Gretel turned to look at him. The boss was wearing a bronze velvet jacket, with the collar and hem turned white, and a small six-pointed star embroidered with blue silk thread on the hidden cuffs. Throwing an identification technique at it, a shadow appeared on the six-pointed star, which was obviously a supplier authorized by the Parliament. Gretel felt slightly relieved. Looking further down, the boss's high leather boots were splashed with mud and exuded a fishy smell. It was obvious that seaweed had been transported from the port area and shipped directly here. He ran from behind the second carriage to the front, nodded and bowed, and handed over a sheet that was folded in half. My lord, please check. If the quantity is okay, I will go and settle the bill with the council. Greet glanced at it and saw a dark skull mark flashing on the lower right corner of the list. He opened the list. A plume of black smoke rose from the mark, and the skull's jaw opened and closed, making a dry mechanical sound. Little Gretel, hurry up, the plague branch is waiting. Greet. No, this project has been transferred to Black Crow Swamp. The Alchemy Guild is so quick. Or do you not want to contribute money? Just use your previous paper to trick Black Crow Swamp into becoming a sponsor and put out the project list. Regardless, it's nice to have someone pay. Greet suddenly stopped being speechless, his heart stopped hurting, and his head straightened up. He glanced at the list, turned his head, and commanded the barbarian. Bernard, go count the rabbits. There are 20 rabbits in the car. Check whether the number is correct and whether each one is healthy. Experimental animals are in place, experimental equipment is in place, and various experimental materials, such as various dyes used to stain bacteria, sea stone flowers used to make agar, beef, and mutton used as broth culture media, are also in place one by one. Greet retreated and poured out his penicillin happily. Well, the environment in the laboratory is really good, no worries about food, no worries about clothes, no worries about wind and rain. Except for a little noise in the laboratory and the sound of horse hooves passing by outside from time to time, there was basically nothing to fault. Of course, this kind of sound of horse hooves is also because the city of Nevis has expanded the warning area to include his laboratory, so he still feels very safe. Ah, do experiments, do experiments, do experiments. Doing bacterial culture experiments is actually very boring. In particular, you have to cook the culture medium yourself, dye the color yourself, use iodine and so on, and start by burning the seaweed yourself. If you are just a science enthusiast and want to do an experiment for fun, then forget it. Making results adds a sense of accomplishment. It doesn't matter if you can't make results. You've already enjoyed the process anyway. However, Gretel-san must rely on these simple experimental conditions to really produce results. Ah, there are still 500 samples to be dyed. In the empty laboratory, where he was the only one, Greet let out a heartfelt wail. Bacterial staining is a technical job, and it is also a job that relies on materials. In Heartland City, Greet searched for dyes all over the city and tried everything, but he only found a dye extracted from wood, which could dye cells a light blue. The reserves of the Magic Council are much richer than those of the small Heartland city. There are 300 to 400 kinds of dyes sent to the laboratory, including the use of acids, alkalis, and various chemicals. This workload is becoming more and more terrifying to the point that people dare not look directly at it. But with such a large amount of materials, apart from increasing Gretel's fatigue, there is not much result, except for a red dye. Other dyes either cannot be dyed, or can be washed away with just a wash of water. I want gentian violet. Crystal violet. Greet flipped the table angrily. There is iodine, there is red dye, and if you give him gentian violet, he can distinguish between gram-positive and gram-negative. However, the premise of everything is to let him get gentian purple. Greet wrote angrily, pressing the sharpened pencil against the white paper and poking 2 holes in a row. His demand list was brought back by the supplier boss. On the 3rd day, a magician made a special trip to his door and delivered a space bag of materials. This is our newly found purple dye. This is conch purple, this is mountain violet, this is lac-bug powder, this is lithospermum violet, this is the solution extracted from gentian flower. Although it is not purple, I brought it here. By the way, there are 2 bundles of gentian flowers here, and there is no gentian here, but there are different kinds of snake galls and fish galls here. You can use them as you like. Gretel, T. How did that Graham Sr. find gentian violet back then? What's the chemical formula of this thing? How is it synthesized? Greet searched hard and vaguely remembered that this thing was a mixture of tetramethylpararosanyline chloride, pentamethylpararosanyline chloride, and hexamethylpararosanyline chloride. The name alone is a mouthful enough. If it weren't for the memory that comes with traveling through time, he wouldn't even be able to recite the official name. As for how to make this thing, Greet said that he is not a chemical major. Hey, has the pharmacy major next door done gentian violet? It's so hard for me, I have nothing. The only way to relieve worries is dissection. Greet spawned and purified the bacteria he had created, spawned and purified them again, and used different methods to toss them on the rabbits. Mix it into the feed and feed it to the rabbits. Let the rabbits' noses and respiratory tracts be wiped. Make a small incision on the skin of the rabbit and apply it on the skin wound. Then, observe, measure physical signs, and record the course of the disease. When the rabbit is dead or half dead and dying, kill it again, cut open its organs one by one, and observe the damage to the organs. Fortunately, he can still dissect, and he can still dissect dozens or 20 rabbits every day to maintain his touch. Every day he cultured and stained. He would have thought that he was no longer a surgeon and had switched to a laboratory. Rabbit A03, the whole body is dehydrated, the skin is dry and inelastic, the subcutaneous tissue and muscles are dehydrated, the heart, liver, and spleen are shrunk due to dehydration, the small intestine is obviously edema, the kidneys are necrotic. Gretel took a look and made a note. After writing everything, I quickly glanced at the previous records. Feeding at 8:05 a.m. on the 21st, the disease started at 2:37 p.m., the excrement was like rice swill, the excrement was smeared and the results were as follows. In the corner of the record book, there is a hand-drawn schematic diagram. The bacteria on it are like commas and a group of tadpoles, arranged in groups and active. Very good. Combining the shape of the bacteria, the onset process, the time of death and the autopsy results, it is basically certain that this thing is 90% likely to be Vibrio cholerae. Gretel showed a satisfied smile. Following the numbers on the record book, he carefully took out 2 petri dishes and kept them separately. One is used to give account to the necromancy school, and the other is kept to prepare the cholera vaccine. Living in this world where you don't need anything and rely entirely on physical fitness and treatment, there are not many vaccines around you, and you always feel that your sense of security is very low. Looking around the locker again, Gretel's smile became even brighter. Suspected Staphylococcus aureus, culture completed. Suspected Pseudomonas aeruginosa, culture completed. Suspected Shigella dysenteriae, culture completed. Including today's Vibrio cholerae, he has cultured, isolated, and verified 7 kinds of pathogenic bacteria. With 3 more, he can complete the exam. Ugh, but why haven't penicillin been found yet? Obviously he has worked so hard. Every day he spreads a table of petri dishes and sprinkles soil, dust, and everything he can think of into the culture media of Staphylococcus aureus, Mycobacterium tuberculosis, and various bacteria. Why? Lady Luck, why doesn't she favor him? It's getting cold. If it drags on any longer, there will be no more melons. Penicillin's lucky charm. The strongest culture medium. If the weather gets colder, there will be no more antibiotics. He wants to get this antibiotic quickly, but there will be even less hope. Another 3,000 words, including noon, another extra update. Human technological progress is really a relay climb. Hans Christian Gram created the Gram staining method, which is indeed very, very great, but it also benefited from the fact that before him, I don't know which chemist made the gentian violet dye. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews. Help little Greed who can't make penicillin. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 229. Gretel worked hard for 2 whole months. From the end of August, when the cool breeze blows and the nights are slightly cooler, to the end of October, when the vegetation is withered and the cold rain falls, I work 12 hours a day, but there is still no penicillin coming out of my liver. Of course, the results in other aspects are very rich. Adding acid, alkali, heating, and tossing all kinds of dyes back and forth resulted in a batch of new things. If they were willing to sell them to the Alchemy Guild, they could probably be sold at a good price. Unfortunately, the protagonist was too lazy to sort them out and sell them. What a waste of time. The 10 pathogenic bacteria from Black Crow Swamp have been isolated, purified, and cultured. The animal experiments and experimental records have been completed. If you want to complete the questions, you can hand them over at any time. The barbarians have gained a lot of weight, there are only so many materials used to make culture media every day, and the remaining beef, mutton, seaweed, sea stone flowers, etc., boiled or roasted, most of them have gone into the barbarian human belly. The only trouble is that there has been no progress in penicillin. So Gretel didn't dare to solve the problem. Are you kidding me? What if those guys from Black Crow Swamp went too far with their experiments, multiplied and spread these infectious bacteria indiscriminately, and really caused a plague? Relying on magical treatment is obviously a drop in the bucket. The bacillary dysentery outbreak in Heartland City was already evident. Until then, holding a bottle of antibiotics in hand will be the confidence to suppress the plague. Bernard, run a little further tomorrow and look for spots and patches of green mold, whether they are growing on the soil, on books, or on the skins of various melons. Give me a piece of it return. Okay, boss. Buy a bunch of fruit again, cut it open and let it grow mold. No. No problem, boss. Add a brazier to the room where the fruit is placed to make it warmer, otherwise mold will not grow. By the way, don't stay in that room. It's not good to stay in a room where mold grows for a long time. Go to another room to warm yourself by the fire. That's not the case, boss. I'm very strong. No need to keep yourself warm on a day like this. No need to save money for me, we don't need these few charcoal money. Boss. There's someone knocking on the door outside. I'll go out and take a look. The savages ran away. After a moment, Master Wharton stood up with a smile on his face and held up an envelope. Boss. What are you here for? Gretel raised his head from his notebook with a surprised look on his face. Didn't I tell you not to come here often? Didn't the disinfectant water have been delivered today? Yes, since Gretel started the bacterial culture project, his second follower, the 5th level mage Mr. Aurora Wharton, has been kicked out of the laboratory, in Gretel's words. Your research direction is not biomedicine. You are in the plastic energy department. No matter how much time you spend on this area, it will not be good for you. Besides, working here is troublesome. You have to wear gloves and take off gloves and protective clothing every day. Take it, there are a lot of rules. Let's go back to the Mage Tower. A magician from the plastic energy department has no idea about sterile operations, and his skills in biomedicine, judging from his ability to make chlorine gas by himself and then poison himself, he is probably not as good as a college undergraduate. If a few petri dishes, or Lenmeyer flasks, etc. were knocked over, Emma would not be enough trouble for him. Therefore, Master Wharton's only duty was to deliver newly prepared disinfectant to the laboratory once a day. 2 big barrels. 1 bucket for showering and 1 bucket for splashing on the floor. Aurora stood in front of the table holding the piece of paper, feeling aggrieved, and her blonde hair looked bleak. Greet thought for a while, took out a notebook from the drawer on the right, turned it to the place between the bookmarks, took a look, and asked. Since you are here today, how are you doing with the various compounds of iodine? Using various combustible gases as casting materials to study fire magic, how is the research going? I asked you to study alumina, how is the research going? Already. Boss, I'm here to send an invitation. He handed over the envelope in his hand. The envelope was made of smooth dark blue hard cardboard, the blue was deep and dark, almost black, with dots of silver powder shining on it. At first glance, it looks like the starry sky at night. There was no word on the envelope, only a single mark flashed in the center of the front. However, no one can ignore this mark alone. External double circle ring. Internal hexagram. In the space cut out by the hexagram, various symbols of time, matter, elements, and metals are drawn. In the center of the 6-pointed star, there is a clear black and white eye open, bright, and alert, and sleepless day and night. The logo of Arcane Journal. On the back of the envelope, sealed with dark red lacquer, the same logo was hot stamped. Gretel opened the paint seal and poured out the letter. On the white letter paper, there were beautiful cursive characters line by line, like vines. Dear Mr. Gretel Nordmark. Since you have published articles in Arcane in the past year and have made important research results in the field of evocation magic, you are hereby invited to come to the Sage Hall of Bridge Magic Academy at 9 a.m. on November 5 to participate in the Arcana Annual Academic Conference and the annual Young Magicians Award Ceremony. Arcana Editorial Department. Going to an academic conference. Gretel glanced at the calendar subconsciously. November 5th. What day is today? There is no need to commute to and from get off work on time, there are no weekends, and naturally there are no holidays or triple wages. Except when he needs to write the date when writing experimental records, at other times, the date is nothing to him. His questions were quickly answered. Aurora came over and looked at his hand. After reading the invitation, she sighed. Wow, boss, I'm invited to the annual meeting of Arcane. The teacher has only attended it twice. Boss, can you take me with you? By the way, boss, do you have formal attire? If not, let's go out for a walk together. There are still 5 days until the departure party, so it's still too late to make clothes. There will also be an award ceremony. If you are invited to go, you will definitely get the award. Gretel held his head and blocked his ears. Who is whose follower? Even if there is one person who should play the role of Tang monk, it should be me. Of course, you have to go to the annual academic conference, go shopping in the streets, and wear formal clothes. After all, it is the top academic journal in the magic world. The appearance of Arcana is definitely not comparable to that of publications such as the Philosopher's Stone. According to Aurora's explanation, magicians who receive invitations to the Arcane annual meeting, unless they are legends, will usually be invited to attend. The process of the Arcana academic annual meeting is much more serious than that of the Philosopher's Stone. The Philosopher's Stone starts at 10 a.m., and everyone arrives early at 7 or 8 o'clock to set up stalls in the empty venue for 2 hours. The bustling, lively and joyful scene still leaves a deep impression on Gretel. The annual academic meeting of Arcana requires everyone to sign in 1 day in advance because it is open to magicians from all over the world. After signing in, if there are out-of-town magicians who need accommodation, the organizer of the annual meeting, which actually borrows the administrative agency of the college, will also make arrangements. So, on the afternoon of November 4th, Bridge Magic Academy was bustling with people, including many young magicians. Gretel, is it greet? Gretel put down his signature pen and straightened up from the sign-in desk, when he heard someone calling his name from afar. He turned his head following the sound, and a brown-haired magician, already excited, squeezed forward through the crowd. I haven't seen you for a long time. Are you still in Nevis? Where are you working? Miles. Gretel shook his head and finally managed to match his face with the person. The person who came here was a classmate from his training class who later entered the School of Illusion. At the beginning of the year, when ultrasound magic was first developed, Gretel once had a meal with them. That time everyone thought the foie gras was not fat, so Miles went to the goose cage to catch the goose with his own hands, and even gave the goose a bite. You can't blame him for not recognizing it. Miles has jumped up compared to the beginning of the year. It was so big that he didn't dare to recognize it. Long time no see. You've grown a lot taller, Gretel laughed in surprise and raised his hands for comparison. After living in seclusion for such a long time and rarely meeting acquaintances, he was still a little happy. Let's have a meal together. Go, go. Many people are coming to tomorrow's meeting. Miles led him out. Everyone is in the store at the back door. Let's walk around and get together. There is almost a restaurant street at the entrance of every academy or at the back entrance, most likely at the back entrance, and magic academies in other worlds are no exception. When students are tired of eating in the school cafeteria and want to have a meal or have a party, these convenient, cheap, and delicious restaurants have become the students' first choice. Because it is for magicians, even trainee magicians and low-level magicians, the consumption level of this restaurant street is still acceptable. At the very least, there is meat in every meal. However, when it comes to the store at the back door, among students and training course participants, there is only one store by default. To the right of the back door is the third facade, the magician's house, which is attached to the back wall of the academy. The owner of this restaurant is a smiling old man from the north. He has lived here for 20 years, and his accent has become almost the same as that of the locals. However, the dishes still retain some northern characteristics. The portions are relatively large, and when students come to eat, there is always more meat. So when it was time for dinner, the upstairs and downstairs were full, and I could sit all the way to the corner of the stairs. Greet followed Master Miles, squeezing sideways for a long way, and then squeezed to sit by the second-floor window. At this time, the dining table was already full of people, all of whom were the top students from the training class on the spot and were able to stay in Nevis. Seeing Gretel's arrival, everyone raised their hands and said hello. Gretel, you're here. Sit inside, sit inside. I haven't seen you for a long time. I heard that you entered the Thunder Horn. Which archmage is your disciple? I didn't even find out about you when I went to the peak last time. I heard that you went to the annual meeting of the Philosopher's Stone. The food is served. Move aside. Chris, don't stand up yet. Careful. Thanks to @book friend 201705171659300540 for the reward of 100 starting coins. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, please recommend votes. Asking for a book review. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 230. Careful. With a scream, the magicians hid and dodged. Gretel had just squeezed past the two people and was squeezing towards the space reserved for him at the very end of the long table. Seeing the change, he paused in his steps and leaned inward reflexively. The problem is there aren't many places to hide. The long table by the window usually only seats 10 people, but now 14 magicians are crowded there. There is also a space left for the waiter to serve the food, but no, shoulders are touching shoulders, legs and feet are touching legs and feet, and everyone can only fall in like dominoes. Then, Greet saw a deep basin full of fish soup mixed with shells, and poured it on Chris' head at the end of the long table with a splash. The soup was so thick that when it was served to the table, it didn't even emit much steam. Only when the soup was poured down did the steam rise up from the fish and shells, blurring the face of the waiter who served the food. Through the heat haze, Greet saw the boy's dull eyes, which suddenly burst into light. His eyes looked straight forward, not trying to save the pot of thick soup, nor looking at Chris who was about to be splashed, but staring at himself. For a moment, Greet felt a chill running down his spine and subconsciously took a step back. His vest hit the wall and felt a slight pain. His attention was distracted for a moment. When he raised his eyes again, several spells were heard at the end of the long table at the same time. Mage Armor. Shield Technique. Shield Technique. Floating Saucer. Transparent, translucent, layers of magical power surged up, covering Master Chris who had his hands crossed to protect his head. Greet stood there, silently opening his mouth. Forget about those who released the mage armor and shield skills, who placed the floating disc. You really have a brilliant mind. Why is your floating disc still there? It's tilted. As a result, these protective measures successfully protected Master Chris without causing him any harm. The pouring soup, shells, and fish meat were all poured over the waiter along the slope of the floating dish. Get out of the way! Gretel shouted reflexively. The waiter who served the food was shocked when he heard the sound, and looked away, trying to dodge. Just when his body tilted outward, his feet became weak and he was unable to take a step forward. The deep basin of fish soup with shells and fish all poured into his lap. Ah! The man screamed in pain, bared his teeth, and fell to the ground. Gretel hesitated for a moment, but finally pushed back in the opposite direction, shouting while squeezing. Hurry up! Hurry up and get cold water. Rinse everything on your body. Let me see, are you seriously injured? The guy looked up at him. Then, Gretel saw the man hanging a leg of fish soup, and the rabbit seemed to jump up, limped, and ran down. At the first glance, the face was still dull, neither red nor white, and there was not even a drop of sweat on the forehead. Gretel. Strange, is this guy wearing a human skin mask, or is he wearing too much powder? It's not necessarily because he was burned in the early years and the pores on his face are all gone, right? It doesn't look like this. After just wondering for a while, the little boy ran away on the wooden floor with bang bang, bang bang. Greet hesitated for a moment, shrugged, and pushed back. There are many patients in the emergency department who are unwilling to treat them. As long as they are not serious and life-threatening, doctors will not persuade them to die. After all, hospitals are not law enforcement agencies, and they cannot lock people up for medical treatment. The guy who got into trouble ran straight down through the crowd with a fishy smell all over his body. He rushed into the kitchen. He couldn't even wait to wash away the fish soup from his body, so he grabbed the boss and whispered. "I saw him." "What?" The boss quickly pulled him aside, looked at his embarrassed look, and picked up a water ladle to rinse him. Amidst the sound of running water, the boy endured the pain and gritted his teeth and said, "I saw him. He's the one who just went up. He has black hair and black eyes. He's wearing a double-breasted windbreaker. He's the one walking toward the table on the left by the window. He's exactly the same as in the portrait. I'll go up and take a look." The boss got up and left. The portrait was painted, but he didn't see the portrait. When this guy, or in other words, this operator came to his store, the portrait was completely soaked. It is said that because the boat was intercepted at sea, he jumped into the sea to escape and swam all night before swimming ashore. This operator is a terrible painter and can only draw stick figures. The result is that he has no portrait to see and no material to copy and distribute. In such a big city, if you want to find a low-level magician whose name is unknown, you can only rely on the eyes of an operator. Thank God. Finally found someone. The shop owner walked out quickly. As soon as he turned around and walked towards the kitchen door, a smile appeared on his face. When he walked out of the kitchen, he bent his waist slightly and greeted the mage apprentices with a smile. "Adelman, what do you want to eat today?" "Still the same." "Nora, how did you do in the exam this time?" "Not very good." "It's okay. It must have been an accident. I will definitely do well in the exam next time." "Jennifer, is it still tuna salad?" "In fact, you are not fat." Okay, I know, just add vinegar and absolutely nothing else." Chatting all the way up. Walking to Gretel's table, he said ouch and looked around for a rag and dustpan. "Sorry, everyone," the little guy was clumsy and spilled the soup, which shocked all the adults. "The kitchen has been recooked. All the dishes on this table are half price, and the store will give away a honey-glazed lamb chop." As he spoke, he bent down, wiped the table one by one, and quietly looked at the people on the table. To Gretel's left, Master Korean Franz, who had summoned people to dinner today, turned his head and asked him, "Greet, what do you want for dessert?" "This restaurant has rainbow pudding, milky potato puree, pumpkin chestnut cake, raspberry layer cake, raspberry tart." "Are there any egg tarts?" "No." "What is that?" Korean recalled the menu and shook his head blankly. Greet was disappointed. "Then let's have a raspberry tower." Unfortunately, he really wanted to eat egg tarts. "When I was a child, there was a mom's bakery near my home. The egg tarts baked there were the most delicious. Once they came out of the oven, the aroma wafted straight to the other side of the road." Even though the family was financially poor at that time, her mother would often buy one and give it to him to try when she let him buy. Later, he was not interested in other desserts. When he saw egg tarts while walking by, he couldn't control his mouth. Even if you know that it is high in sugar and fat and exceeds standards. "Sir, what kind of dessert are the egg tarts you are talking about?" Suddenly, the boss had already got in front of him and asked with a smile, "Please tell me in detail, please go back to the shop and make it successfully. Please taste it, adults." "Forget it." Gretel shook his head. He knew nothing about making desserts, and it was probably a long way from making it successfully, so why let a small shop spend so much money? Besides, even if the trial production is successful, it won't taste like it was when I was a kid. However, the boss stood hunched over and refused to leave, with a smile on his face, just grinding against him. Greet's face softened, but he finally said something about it. "It's nothing more than puff pastry on the bottom, egg liquid on top, sugar added to the egg liquid, and then put in the oven." No matter how detailed he is, he doesn't know. Hey, it sounds similar to the formulas thrown to the Magic Council? But the boss doesn't mind if the recipe is not detailed. After writing it down, he smiled and asked for advice. "What do you call me, sir? Where do you live? When the trial production in the shop is successful, I will send it to your door for your taste dash." "No, no, no," Greet waved her hands repeatedly. There was already a classmate nearby who was quick to answer. "His name is Gretel Nordmark. It took 2 full hours to eat this dinner." The boss ran up and down, serving dishes, serving soup, cutting steaks, cutting honey-glazed lamb chops, delivering wine, delivering desserts. He was very happy around their table. He nodded and bowed, his face turned into a chrysanthemum smile, and it was 3+ points sweeter than the smile he usually used to entertain guests. Influenced by the boss, the staff in the store are also extremely attentive. Anyone who has a little free time must come to the table by the window to hang out. Except for the guy who was burned before, I don't know if he was seriously injured or something, but he never showed up. Gretel asked kindly out of concern for his injury. The guy who filled him with water shrugged with a bored look on his face. "That silly boy, he is a relative of the boss from the countryside. His brain has been burned out since he was a child. He has always been stupid. He came here 2 months ago. Apart from having some strength, he can't do anything and can't speak smoothly." "Gretel. That look doesn't look like someone with abnormal mental development." In any case, the students in the training class enjoyed value for money services. Everyone ate and drank, chatting about interesting things in class that year and where they were going. You worked on projects with the Archmage at Thunderhorn, I worked for the 5th level mage at the Alchemy Guild, and he became an assistant at Bridge Magic Academy. We all have a bright future. This dinner was eaten until late at night. The students went back to their respective residences, and some of them lived far away or were lazy, the former, such as those who lived at the top of the mountain, and the latter, such as Gretel, simply enjoyed the accommodation arranged by the Magic Academy. As soon as they left, the boss quickly went downstairs and found the guy who had been kicked in the face. "I've found out the name clearly. It's Gretel Nordmark. I'll continue to check other things tomorrow. How are you? Is the perm still tight?" The guy looked up from the lamp. He still had that dull face, but his eyes were shining coldly, and he pinched his thigh with his right hand. "It's okay." "Hiss. You're hurt so bad." The boss frowned. Under the dim light, the man's legs were burned from thigh to calf, covering an area the size of 3 palms, with shiny blisters. On the side of the thigh, close to the knee, there is a dark black area that is almost bone-like. If it were an ordinary person, if this wound was suppurating and had a fever, and it took half a month to heal safely, it would be considered a blessing. This guy is a professional. A mere burn may not knock him down, but with that deep black wound. Okay, it's indeed quite heavy. Someone actually saw it, and the guy stopped being pretentious and let out a long and short gasp. His thumbs were pinched on his thigh until they turned white, and he finally raised his head and asked, "Is there any more medicine?" "The last bottle of holy water." The boss hesitated for a moment, then took out a small glass bottle and handed it over with shaking hands. "The inspections at sea are strict during this period. I don't know when the next supply will come." "Hey, when will you take action? After you finish your work this time, can you take me back with you?" 6,000 words, another update completed. This time this is not a patient. It's not a medical drama either. Who guessed the last chapter correctly? Anyone? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, and ask for recommendation votes. Please review the book.